And for those who enjoy this channel and would love to support us financially, please feel free to hit that donate link. We'd greatly appreciate it. God bless.
Here we've got Dr. Ryan Hayes coming with us for an interview on abiogenesis. September 24th, we've got Dr. Dino back with us debating Derek Barnes on Is Evolution Scientific, 8:30 p.m. EST. Couple more exciting interviews as well that I'm just very close to confirming, so I will announce those when they are 100% confirmed. Tonight's debate is going to be opening. We're going to be starting with Bill, who's going to have an opening of 12 minutes. Ron's going to give a rebuttal of 5 minutes. Then Ron's going to go immediately after his rebuttal round for his opening of 12. Bill is going to give his rebuttal of 5. Then we're going to have 2 sets of cross-examination, which is going to be 5 minutes each, and then a respectful, cordial discussion, and then a Q&A. So for Q&A, make sure you are tagging me. Looks like we've already got a good super sticker war going on. So Doki Doki Bible Club and Redefine Living putting forth those $1, $2 super stickers. So thanks so much, guys. The party's just getting started, so this should be fun. Enough for me, though. I'm going to hand it over to the debaters just to break the ice, give a brief introduction of themselves, who they are. I mean, they're no strangers, but nonetheless, let's hand it over to Bill. Bill, thanks for being here with us again tonight.
Well, many, many thanks for you for hosting this. Thank you, Ron, for participating. I'm an engineer. I've been one for 37 years. And I used to be an atheist because I truly thought it was true science. Science convinced me otherwise. And I really apologize for this, Ron. I do not mean to embarrass you, but I have the highest respect for this man. He's had tremendous accomplishments, unbelievable accomplishments. I won't get into them because I can tell he's humble. I saw one of your debates. I said, this is a good, humble guy. But I tell you, he's a genius. He's ambitious. He's created jobs beyond belief. And it's a privilege to share the stage with you. And I promise to never sneak attack or shame or slam. You're a man I have high respect for.
You just broke that promise.
No, I embarrassed you.
I'm kidding. I'm kidding. I
understand.
I very much appreciate the kind words.
I'm just telling you the truth.
Well, I do have to say, I was saying it before we went live. You know, I want to thank Salvador for introducing us to Ron. He's been a blessing. He's given us his time so many times before for some great debates. I would say some have been my personal favorite. So yeah, that being said, over to you, Ron. Thanks again for being here.
Well, thanks for having me. Thanks for making me feel welcome. I'm Ron Garret. I'm a software engineer by trade. In a previous life, I made my living as a research scientist working on AI and robotics for NASA. And I mention that only because I'm going to be saying some things about the scientific method. And so those credentials happen to be relevant for some of the things I'm going to say, not because I want to pump myself up.
Well, the both of you are awesome. So once again, thanks for being here. We've got a super chat just came in. George Bond, $10. Thanks so much, George. From Jason and me for more pizza. How sweet of you. We're going to have a pizza party when this is done. So I told you guys bring the numbers. Okay, so that being said, I guess great introductions from the both of you. Why don't we jump into our first opening statement? Bill, no rush. Get yourself ready. I'll get the clock set, but I won't start until you tell me to start so you can feel comfortable. We'll be easy going. I'll give
right.
you a minute warning, Bill. Once we get to the 11-minute mark, I'll say, Bill, 1 minute left, and then you just start winding down. If you go 10 seconds over, that's fine. We're not going to knock on you for it. So,
Okay, thank you. And I will not knock on Ron if he goes over. This is the California chill debate.
yes, we're easy going here. No reason why we can't disagree on things and still be friends.
All right. All right. Can you guys see that screen?
No, not yet.
Oh, okay.
No problem. Hit share, and then there'll be a middle button you got to share as well. I'll see it pop up here. There we go. Okay, let me approve it, and good to go, Bill. Whenever you're ready, just let me know, and I'll start the clock.
Okay, well, once again, it's an honor to be here. I'd love to talk to people about this subject. My channel is Bill Morgan. I have 12 subscribers, I think, so maybe you could make 13, but I don't really care about numbers. Anyone out there can call me or email me. That's a landline, so don't think you're going to ruin my cell phone. Okay, so contact me at will. My life story, real quickly. I was raised going to church every Sunday. I claimed to believe in God. And when I was 14 years old, my biology teacher put this on the wall and said, as if it were a fact, that humans had ape-like ancestors. And as a 14-year-old, I've loved science my whole life. I love science still. And when he told me that, I go, wow, I didn't know we were related to ape men. I go, well, that makes the Bible wrong. And at that day, I did claim to believe in the theory of evolution and claim to be an atheist for 12 years. What got me out of that was someone handed me information regarding these, and I learned that these are cartoon drawings. This is not science. I got a paper that talked about the actual fossils. I looked into it, and my belief is that every field of science is supported by the creation position. So today's debate is, does science support creation or evolution? What is science? Science is the process of having good explanations for what we observe. Observation is the key to science. There are steps to science. You start with an idea. Suppose you had the idea that pens could fly. You can call it a hypothesis and earn more money, but it's an idea. What do you do next? You make observations. You drop the pen 100,000 times. You realize pens do not fly. You reach the conclusion that pens do not fly. There's another idea out there that humans are related to apes. What is step 2? We make observations. So, what do people observe? People observe there are I gotta hide this thing. There are 8 billion people on Earth. Look at that, amazing. We observe that humans have human parents, human grandparents, human great-grandparents, as far back as you can go. And when they reproduce, they make more humans. That is what we observe. We observe 1 million apes. What do they make? They have ape parents, ape grandparents, and when they have offspring, they're apes. So, 8 billion humans, 1 million apes, 0 ape men. Trust your eyes. People make people. Apes make apes. Observation supports the creation model. That's what they'll make. People might ask about the fossils. This is a quote from an evolutionist. Scientists have been on the trail of the last common ancestor for decades. They still have not found it. But because there is so little agreement on even what it should look like, they're having trouble interpreting the fossils. So living evidence, fossil evidence does not support that ape man ever existed. Evolutionists themselves admit there are no observed ape men. The theory of evolution, as I see it, is anti-science. So 0 ape men observed. Conclusion, apes are not related to humans. Another evolutionist idea is that reptiles are the ancestors of birds. What do we observe? 100 billion reptiles, 400 billion birds. How many transitions exist? 0. This should be a problem. If I was an evolutionist, this would be a big problem for me. Where is the observable evidence? Well, the reptile can tell us. I can only make more reptiles. It's called genetics and biochemistry. DNA, in my opinion, gives strong support to the creation model. What do creationists believe? This is really deep stuff here. Apes make apes, people make people, reptiles make reptiles, birds make birds. Trillions of pieces of evidence to support this. Bacteria makes bacteria. It's not a religious belief. It's genetics and biochemistry, everything we observe. Polite question for Ron, and again, all questions are with respect. Do you believe that humans are related to apes because your eyes have seen evidence for it, which would be science? Or do you believe humans are related to apes because your ears were told there is evidence for it, which would be faith? I believe in science. Our eyes tell us apes make apes, people make people. Let's talk about bacteria. There's a big difference between creation and evolution. Evolutionists would say, hey, those are my relatives. Creationists would say, no, those are not my relatives. Again, respectful question. Ron, do you believe bacteria is your relative? I do not, because of genetics, DNA, and observation. What else do creationists believe? We believe that vision is the result of result of design. The definition of design off Google is a result of a plan. Definition of chance, not planned. There are millions of systems that need to work for you to have vision. For you to watch this debate, millions of things need to work. I'm going to talk about one. What happens to you when you pass from the darkness to the light? When you leave a dark room and go out in the bright sunshine, what happens? Amazing scientific things happen. The bright light causes your iris to cover up more of your pupil. If it's low light, it opens. This is a fantastic, beautiful design. How does it work? Light is constantly passing through your pupil. It goes to your retina and goes to your ganglion cells. These little guys are working 24/7, talking to your brain, either saying, hey, we need more light. Hey, we have too much light, all day long. Just think of how hard your brain works. So the brain passes information back to the iris. This is what the muscles that look like that control the iris. I just find this fascinating. I love the muscular action. You have radial and spherical motion. Radial to open it up, and then spherical to contract. Beautiful, beautiful design, in my opinion. This is called a feedback control system. All day long, your ganglion cells are sending signals to your brain to either allow for more light or less light. Feedback control systems are very big in engineering, and they're always the result of design. The Mars rover will have 23 eyes. This is right off the internet. No one would ever believe that even one of these eyes were the result of chance, and the eyes on your head are much more well designed than these. Question for Ron, I ask with respect. How do brilliant people in science see this and not conclude it's the result of design? I hope we can have a polite talk about this. To me, the design is never, never ending. Vision is a system. That means there's many components. Evolution is a step-by-step process. What evolved first? It's a system. The eye, the optic nerve, or the visual cortex. For vision to work, you need all of these. Do they show up at once? But evolution, again, is a step-by-step process. What part of the eye evolved first? The cornea, the lens, the pupil, the iris, the retina? I propose they all showed up instantly by a fantastic designer, and they're all functional right from the beginning. I believe that systems such as vision cannot happen by a step-by-step process. And for vision to work, you need a muscular system, a nervous system, a digestive system. It never ends, in my opinion. Another polite question for Dr. Garret. How many of the following 4 images do you think is the result of intelligent design? That's not my arm. I have much bigger guns. Just kidding. How many of these do you think are the result of design? 3, 4? I think all 4. When robotic engineers name the parts of the arm, what do they name them? They name them after the body, the waist, the shoulder, the elbow, the wrist, the tool. I think this is fantastic. The fantastic engineers who make these design robotic arms just like the arm designed by the creator. The creator got it right the first time. Which arm is more complex? The arm on the right can get stronger, can heal itself when injured, started off as a single cell, can regulate temperature, can respond to stimuli, and play guitar and pick up a heavy rock. I don't believe arms could evolve by a step-by-step process. They all have to have all their systems show up at once. Creationists believe eyes and arms are the result of design. With no shame, I believe there is a designer. Nature has an IQ of 0. Creationists believe there's a designer with infinity. I do not believe nature with an IQ of 0 could make an eye or an arm, but I have faith that there's a designer who spoke it all into existence. Now, someone might say, Mr. Morgan, you deny evolution is true. There's me trying to look cool on the witness stand. Sir, the word evolution means change. I believe some things change, some things don't change. When you mean evolution, or what do you say when you mean evolution? Or what do you mean? Okay? Are you playing word games? This is very important. I believe dogs can be bred. That's a change. But it's microevolution. They're still dogs. There's all kinds of variety of dogs, but they're still dogs. It doesn't prove dogs have bacteria ancestors. There's about 100 different breeds of dogs. So natural selection. Suppose you were in Alaska with a furry dog and a hairless dog, and you left them there by mistake. They fall in love and get married, and they make a mixture, some hairy, some hairless. When the winter comes, what's going to happen? The hairless freeze and die. They don't reproduce. But the furry dogs can reproduce. They make mostly furry dogs, but they might make a hairless one. But the next winter wipes him out. And in Alaska, the only type of dog is going to be hairy. Natural selection is 100% true, but dogs can only make dogs. So people get taller than they used to be. That's microevolution. So I believe in change, but there's limits because people can only make people. But I do deny macroevolution. I categorically deny that humans have bacterium ancestors. Creationists believe matter and energy did not originate from nothing. Just think of all the matter and energy in this universe.
1 minute, Bill.
Okay, great. Where did it come from? It didn't get here by natural means. The first law of thermodynamics teaches matter and energy is neither created nor destroyed. That's a nightmare for the atheist. How did life originate? Life did not originate by natural means. This is a scientific statement. Science teaches the law of biogenesis and the cell theory. Life only comes from life. Sometimes people say evolution does not address the question of the origin of universe or the origin of life. That's like saying, let's talk about a baseball game. But the evolutionist only wants to talk about the 9th inning. Why would they do that? I believe because they're wise, because they don't have answers to the origin. But creationists love to talk about the whole game, and I believe this debate is about the whole game, including origins. And creationists love the origins question. Okay, consensus real quick. In 1799, George Washington was very sick. What was the consensus? Let's do bloodletting. That was the medical scientific consensus. Oops, 1799, it killed him. It's Egypt in 1550 BC. You have an ear infection. What's the medical consensus? Hey, dude, I can fix that. Egyptian cure for ear infections was cow dung. You cut your finger in Egypt, 1550. You might not want to go to the doctor, but this guy says, I can fix that. The Egyptian medical consensus was worm blood and donkey dung. So question authority. The consensus does not always lead you to the truth. Facts and science will. Polite question for Ron. If this was 1850, would you be a creationist because that was the consensus, that all the pillars of science were creationists? So once again, don't follow the crowd. Follow the evidence. Don't bow to consensus. Bow to truth. Speak truth. Use science to do that. And there's 6 quick questions. Do you think visions are the result of design or chance? Do systems like eyes and arms evolve? Do you believe in evolution because you've seen evidence or only because you've heard it? I know you're not a physicist, Ron, but how do you think matter and energy originated? I know you're not a biologist, but how do you think life originated? And do you agree genetics shows people make people and apes make apes? And I apologize for running over 37 seconds. But thank
No
you.
problem. No problem at all, Bill. Once again, thank you so much for your opening statement. Thank you for the visuals. We're easygoing here. You went over just a little bit. Therefore, Ron, I'll give you 13 minutes, and then that would be equal time. So, and then whatever's not used, of course, never feel obligated. We just throw into the discussion period. So, Ron,
Sure.
whenever you're ready, you just let me know to start the timer.
Okay, but I'm doing my rebuttal first, right?
Oh, you're right. You're right. Yep. So we've got
So-
the 5-minute rebuttal. So let me change.
So actually,
it.
can you leave that last slide on? Because I'd like to start my rebuttal by answering those questions.
If you want to share screen, Bill, I will approve it and we'll be good to go.
Thank you, sir.
Okay, and then on your first word, Ron, I'll start the rebuttal round. For the rebuttals, guys, I'll have to be more strict than with the openings. So rebuttals, we'll keep it to a strict 5. Openings, a little bit more flexible. But Ron, whenever you're ready.
Okay, so those are all great questions and fair questions, and I will give you my answers to them. I obviously think vision is a result of well, the question is a straw man. It's not a result of design nor chance. It's a result of evolution, which is has a random component, but also includes the non-random component of natural selection. And the mechanism by which eyes evolved is very well documented now. You can just look it up on Wikipedia. What came first was light-sensitive cells, and then a sort of bowl-shaped shape that made those light-sensitive cells more directional, and the incremental steps that go up to the eye, including the iris, are incredibly well documented, all the way down to the biochemistry. You can just look it up on Wikipedia. How do systems like eyes and arms evolve? Gradually, step by step, through random mutation and natural selection. I believe in evolution because it makes sense to me. I have looked at some of the data, and also because I have faith in the scientific, and I'll use this word faith, I have faith in the scientific process that it leads to truth. And it's not because I'll have more to say about this in my opening, not just because it's the consensus, but because that consensus was arrived at through a process that was specifically designed to eliminate human bias. How does matter and energy originate? I have no idea. How do I think life originated? Through abiogenesis. And I will give you long odds that despite the fact that we don't know all the details yet today, that we will have them figured out in a matter of a small number of decades. In fact, within our lifetimes, I believe that we will have a much better story to tell about abiogenesis than we do today. Yes, of course, people make people and apes make apes, but that is a straw man because our ancestors were not apes. They were something else that were neither apes nor humans, but through divergence and environmental isolation, one branch of the descendants of our common ancestor made apes, and another branch of our common ancestors made us. Let's see, what else? There's a lot to unpack here. All right, we'll start with this. Reptiles are, where's the evidence that reptiles are ancestors of birds? Reptiles, by the way, are not the direct ancestors of birds. Reptiles are the ancestors of dinosaurs, which are the ancestors of two branches of dinosaurs called avian and non-avian dinosaurs. And the avian dinosaurs are the ancestors of birds. There is a lot of evidence for this in the fossil record and in genetics, but I will just point you to one of my favorite bits of data, which is something that you can actually directly observe today, and that is that a lot of birds actually have reptile-like features even today. So chickens, for example, have scaly legs, and penguins have feathers on their wings that look very much like scales because they're adapted for moving to water. They aren't scales, they're still feathers, but it's an example of something called convergent evolution, where the same physical feature is arrived at through different biochemical pathways. And you can actually take a look at a penguin wing and see this with your own eyes. With regards to the dogs make
Oh,
dogs.
sorry, Ron. I just want to say you got 1 minute.
Yeah. With regards to dogs make dogs, yeah, of course dogs make dogs, but dogs can also interbreed with coyotes. And the last time I brought this up, somebody said in the chat that coyotes are a kind of dog. Well, that's just playing with words, because horses make horses and zebras make zebras. Does that mean are zebras a kind of horse? Because horses and zebras can also interbreed. They make an offspring called a zorse. And there are lots of different kinds of animals that can interbreed and make all kinds of hybrids. And so it's just a question of how you choose to label the things that can interbreed with each other. And I think I just hit my time limit.
Awesome. With 3 seconds to spare. Thank you so much, Ron. And we're just going to be jumping right into your opening then. So I'll restart the clock I'll put 13 minutes because that's roughly what Bill took. And take your time.
Do I have to unshare?
Yeah, I can do it. Here, I'll remove.
Oh, okay.
And Ron, when you're ready, I can share your screen as well.
Yep. Okay, am I on?
Let's see here. There we go.
So when I'm in slideshow mode, I can't actually see myself and the screen. So can you see this slide?
I can see the slide. Yes, we can all see it.
Cool. All right, so we have a little bit of a difference of opinion about what the scientific method consists of. This is the actual scientific method. You don't start with an idea. You start with a problem, which is something that you observe that cannot be adequately explained by current theories. The next step in the process is you suggest a possible explanation. You make a guess. This is called a hypothesis. Then you have to make sure that this hypothesis passes a number of basic checks. You have to make sure that it's falsifiable and consistent with the known data. Any hypothesis that is not consistent with the known data and not falsifiable is rejected a priori. Then you use that hypothesis to make a prediction for an experiment whose outcome is not already known. And then you do the experiment, add the outcome of that to the repertoire of known data. If the experiment is not consistent with your hypothesis, you reject that hypothesis and try to come up with a new one. Otherwise, you keep it around temporarily and either do another one or identify a new problem to work on and lather, rinse, repeat. And this all goes on in a cycle that eventually converges towards something that may or may not be the truth, but it's something that turns out to be useful. And that's the reason that people care about science, because following this process leads to explanations that provide you with predictive power that gives us a lot of leverage in navigating our reality. Now, there are a lot of creationist misconceptions about science that I'd like to take this opportunity to dispel. You didn't bring these up, but they come up often in creationist debates, and I just want to use this opportunity to address some of them. There's no distinction between historical and observational science. It's all the same process. Whether you're talking about finding explanations for things that you observe that have to do with the past or the present doesn't matter. The scientific process is the same in both cases. And there seems to be a little bit of a misconception in some quarters about why it's important to be able to replicate the results of experiments. It's not in order to show that natural laws don't change. The idea that nature is governed by laws that don't change is just a hypothesis. It's by now a very well confirmed hypothesis, but it's not an assumption. It's something that was arrived at through the scientific process. The reason that replicability in experiments matters is to rule out experimenter bias. And there are a lot of things in this process that are specifically designed in order to get around the fact that humans have all kinds of cognitive biases. We sometimes are intentionally deceptive. We make mistakes. This process is specifically designed to work around those. So in particular, when you're doing science, you cannot bring to bear hermeneutics or theology. That's just not part of this process. So with that in mind, let's take a look at the Bible. Now, to be fair, I asked you in private correspondence beforehand whether you took the Bible as an errant And that was, and whether that was the reason that you didn't believe in evolution, and you said no. And so there's a chance that this is going to be a little bit of a straw man. I prepared this before I heard what you were going to say in your opening. So I want to hedge a little bit. There are two ways that we can look at the Bible. One is as data to be explained, and the other is as a scientific hypothesis, a guess, an explanation to try to explain the other things that we see around us. And I'm going to talk about the Bible in the latter way, as what happens if we look at the Bible as a scientific hypothesis and take it seriously as a scientific hypothesis. So what does this hypothesis actually say? Well, there are two possibilities. Again, either the Bible is 100% reliable and we can take every word in it as a claim of truth, or it isn't, and we need some extra biblical source or method to determine which parts are reliable. Most young Earth creationists take the first option, and so I'm going to take that one here because this is a Young Earth Creationist forum. But I just wanted to put the second option up as a possibility that we might want to consider as we go through this process. So let's look at what this hypothesis that we're about to consider says. We'll start with Genesis. God said, let there be a firmament in the midst of the waters, and let it divide the waters from the waters. And God made this firmament and divided the waters that were under the firmament from the waters which were above the firmament. And God called this firmament heaven. So there's this firmament, whatever that means, called heaven, and there's water above it and water below it, which seems a little odd given what we know about the way the world is in modern times. But okay, we're still going to try to take this seriously. God called the night day, and the darkness he called night, and the evening and the morning were the first day. So there's days that are demarcated by evenings and mornings rather than, say, the rotation of the earth about its axis. This is starting to sound like a very different cosmology than our modern cosmology. This is starting to sound like a flat earth theory. And there are other things in the Bible that make it sound like this is a flat earth cosmology. The Bible makes reference to the four corners of the earth and the pillars of the earth that God has set the world upon. There is a story in Matthew about the devil taking Jesus up onto a high mountain and showing him all the kingdoms of the world, which would only be possible if the earth were flat. And so it sounds to me, on a plain reading of the text, that the hypothesis being advanced here is a flat earth cosmology that looks something like this. And this is, in fact, what the ancient Babylonians believed, that there was a circle of the earth and a dome-shaped firmament that contained the stars and the planets and the sun and stars, and that was all sitting on the foundations of the earth, and it looked kind of like this. There's this book. If you don't believe me, there's this book by Edward Hendry called The Greatest Lie on Earth, which sets out this theory in excruciating detail, 30 chapters, 300 pages, where he talks about all the biblical support for flat Earth. So I'm not saying that this is correct. All I'm saying is that the interpretation of what this putative scientific hypothesis is actually saying, that it's advancing a flat Earth cosmology, that's a defensible position. So let's look at some other things it says here. Genesis 3:1. Now the serpent was more subtle than any beast of the field which the Lord God had made, and he said unto the woman, yada, yada, yada. Atheists often like to joke about or poke fun at Christians because they believe in talking snakes. And I think that's a little unfair, except that if you look at the text, it really does look like it's talking about a snake. And even if you look at the original Hebrew, the word for serpent there is nachash, which is the Hebrew word for snake. And later on in the story, God curses the snake and says that you will go upon your belly, which sounds like a hypothetical explanation for why snakes don't have legs. Here's another one. Cain knew his wife, and he conceived and bare Enoch, and he built a city. Cain was a descendant of Adam. So here is the first generation of humans, and one of them is building a city, which seems odd because there aren't enough humans on Earth yet for a city to exist, to be housed in a city. I'll skip this one. Joshua made the sun stand still.
Ron, I just wanted to pause real quick because I was just saving questions in the chat. Have you been moving through slides in the last couple slides?
I have. Do you not see
Maybe.
those?
Well, I think it might have froze. If you want to.
Okay, so I'm referring here to Joshua 10:12. Joshua said, in the sight of Israel, sun, stand thou still. And then verse 13 says, the sun stood still in the midst of heaven and hasted not to go down about a whole day. If we are going on the assumption that the Bible is 100% accurate, then we have to assume that this is being advanced as a hypothesis of something that actually happened. So let's do a little bit of math. If the Earth, if we go now in our modern cosmological understanding that the Earth is in fact a planet, rotational energy would have to be dissipated in order to make it stop and then start it up again. The answer turns out to be that it's about 1 trillion times the amount of energy that was released by the biggest hydrogen bomb ever detonated. Where did all that energy go? How did it all manage to be dissipated and then return to the Earth to start it up spinning again without melting it? Here is a picture of the Hubble Deep Field, which is an actual photograph of some of the most distant galaxies in the world, none of which have ever been seen by humans. I believe that they exist because I believe that the scientists who built the Hubble telescope and reported this data are not being deceptive. If you do the math on this, the maximum radius of the observable universe, if it is only as old as the Bible says, is 10,000 light years, but the center of the Milky Way galaxy is 26,000 light years away. The closest galaxy to us is 2.5 million light years from us. And then, of course, we have Noah's Ark, which was a boat that was 300 by 50 by 30 cubits, or about 150 by 25 by 15 meters. 3 decks, 1 window, about 3 acres of floor space, built entirely of wood by less than a dozen people with hand tools, and held at least 2 of every kind of land animal and bird, plus food for them for a year. This is what it would have looked like. This is not a boat. This is a building shaped like a boat, and it's being built with modern power tools. It's 51 feet high. The biggest actual wooden boat ever built was the USS Wyoming, which was smaller than the Ark. It was only 106 meters long on deck rather than 150. And it barely stayed afloat. It foundered in heavy seas, sank with the loss of all hands less than 20 years after she was built. And while she was afloat, she had to be pumped constantly because she leaked like a sieve. So this Ark had to have marsupials, which somehow had to get to the Ark and then back to Australia without leaving a trace anywhere else on the planet. This is a fossil of a giant sloth, which this is an artist's rendering of what it would have looked like. So the Ark would have had to have 2 of these and 2 of these. And there's some people in the corner for scale. This is used to be called a brontosaurus. Now it has a different name, I forget. And 2 of the 2 woolly mammoths, which are distinct from mastodons, which are distinct from elephants, and of course 2 triceratops, maybe 2 T-Rexes. You start to run out of room even with 3 acres of floor space, and it just starts to beg credulity as a plausible scientific theory. See, I'm going to, I think I'll just stop there. I had 2 more slides, but I'll bring those up during the discussion if they're relevant. So.
No problem. No problem, Ron. Just on time. Anyways, that's 12 minutes. We're going to be jumping into Bill's rebuttal now of 5 minutes. Once again, to the chat, thanks for the super stickers, super chats, and questions. We've got some good questions coming in already, and we're not even in the discussion yet. So, Bill, we've got you on the clock for 5 minutes on your first word.
Well, not my first. Let me do the share screen, if you don't mind. Just turn up there. Okay. Can you see that? That's not what I'm going to use. Okay, ready? SFT. Shall I go?
Yes. Yeah, we can see. It looks like it's good. Whenever you're ready,
Okay.
I'll start the timer.
All right. Well, Ron's purpose in life is not to please me, but I'm disappointed. I signed up for a creation versus evolution. What is the science support? I fully respect that he's got problems with the Bible, but that's a fully different debate. And perhaps in another day he could debate someone on that. But I came and prepared for science. So talking about science, Ron, do you agree that there is no evidence, and we're talking about evidence. You said maybe someday they'll come up with evidence for the origin of life. You said decades. But what is your best explanation of how life originated? I know you're not a biologist. I'm not asking you if you know. What is your best explanation? Origin of matter and energy. Wait, this is my rebuttal.
I'm sorry. I thought you were asking me.
Oh, yes, I'm sorry, sir. I'm
My
sorry.
apologies.
I know you're a respectful guy. But if I could have about 20 seconds at it, I appreciate that. What is your best evidence for the origin of matter and energy? I know you're not a physicist, neither am I. Do you think it came from nothing, or do you think it's eternal? I know you're well-read and have thought about this, but I hope you don't avoid that question. Let me quote you. Of course, people make people. Well, what have you observed to think that it's ever been different? Please share with us why you think it. Is it because of consensus? Is it because of Wikipedia? Science is not about consensus or Wikipedia. What have you observed to think people have non-human ancestors? You also said, of course, reptiles make reptiles. I agree. What have you seen in science to convince you of otherwise? There's a lot of difference between reptiles and birds. Evolutionists believe legs became wings. Quite a difference. Scales became feathers. Quite a difference. Not a couple of mutations away. Reptile bones and bird bones, what's the difference? Reptiles have solid bones, birds have hollow bones. How did that happen? Is there any evidence that it ever changed? This is a guy named Carl Zimmer. I sent him an email once. He wrote an evolution article on birds that said, how did birds evolve hollow bones? His response, they had to evolve hollow bones so they could fly. I didn't ask that. How did they? And I said, is it perhaps birds were designed to be birds with hollow bones? And he never replied. Reptiles have slow metabolism. Birds have the highest metabolism among living animals. Cold-blooded reptiles became warm-blooded birds. Okay? Reptiles have horrible vision. Birds have excellent vision. The hind feet, you said, hey, they're kind of similar. They're scaly, but they're different. Birds have perching feet. Reptiles have legs for crawling. So getting back, I don't know how much time I have left. I didn't write it down. Please, Ron, share with us your best guess for the origin of matter, origin of life, origin of energy, origin of arms, origin of eyes. Did we evolve a cornea and then an iris and then an optic nerve? It's a system. Systems need to work together for us to have a functioning eye, functioning arm. Evolution has the three-stool problem: time, mutation, and natural selection. They all are harmful for bacteria to blue whale evolution. Oh, and please answer if you think we're, oh, is that time? Speaking of time, time is the enemy of evolution. It's called entropy. Mutations are the enemy of evolution. They lose information. And as we talked about natural selection, you lose traits through natural selection. You eliminate traits like dogs, you lose the genes to make hairless dogs in a cold environment. And I think that ding meant my time is up. Is that correct?
No, that was a message coming in on my phone.
Oh, okay.
Sorry.
Well, it threw me off my game. Yeah.
I apologize. I'll mute my phone.
I think
Okay.
you got one more. I think we got one more minute for you, Bill. So take your time, and
Okay.
okay, go.
Okay. So for the evolution model, you need to go from single cell organism to a blue whale. Time loses information. Mutations lose information. Natural selections lose information. Bacteria to blue whale requires an increase in information. How did that arrive? And also, where is the evidence for it? Ron, I asked politely. Evolution in nature is going downhill. This is obviously a planet of extinction and death. Evolution is a dream of new organisms appearing. What we see is death. So going back to my three-legged stool, that's like saying if you give me $3 a day, you think you'll be rich. No, by losing things, you don't improve, you go downhill. So again, I appreciate your Bible concerns, but we're here to talk about science and observation. And what is your reasoning besides consensus and Wikipedia that you have bacteria ancestors? And if you could reply to that, that'd be great. That's probably my time, right?
Yes, that would be time right there. So we've gone through openings and rebuttal rounds, and therefore we are jumping right into cross-examination. We have 2 sets, 5 minutes each. I'm guessing because Bill started with his opening. Bill, are you cross-examining Ron first for 5 minutes?
If I may?
Of course.
Okay. All right. All right. My first question, Ron. On a scale of 1 to 100, where are you on your belief in God? 1 is there's absolutely no God, and 100 is you're absolutely sure there is a God.
2.
Okay, and why is that?
I see no evidence for the existence of a God.
Okay, go ahead.
Sorry, I have seen nothing that I can't explain on using purely naturalistic mechanisms.
Okay, what about the origin of matter and energy? Can you explain that using naturalistic explanations?
I can't. I don't know where matter and energy came from, but I see no evidence that whatever created it was complex. So the God hypothesis makes some very specific predictions, which I don't see being informationally complex. Evidence that I see is that whatever it is that is responsible for all this can actually be described with very simple mathematical equations and is informationally simple.
Okay, I might be missing something. I might be slow because at one hand you're saying there's an explanation, and then origin of matter and energy, you said there wasn't. What about origin of life? Do you have any, what is your best explanation for the origin of life? Not saying you know, you're not a biologist.
My best guess is that it happened through abiogenesis.
And why do you believe that?
It seems like the most likely explanation of all the possible candidates that I've seen advanced, the one that is most consistent with everything else that is known about reality, or everything else that I believe to be known about reality. And it's plausible. If you do the numbers on the odds, it's much more plausible than most people think.
Why do you say it's plausible? What have you observed?
What have I observed? I haven't observed firsthand anything, but the reason I think it's plausible is because the abiogenesis story is that it started out with this planet with a biosphere rich in organic material. And at some point in time, some of that organic material managed by pure chance to arrange itself into a molecule that was self-replicating. Now, that's an extremely unlikely event. But it only had to happen once, and it only happened to happen once on the entire planet, and over a period that was probably measured in millions of years. So, with that much material to play with and that much time to play with, the odds of that event happening once, it seems plausible to me that it could have happened by pure chance. We don't yet know exactly how. But again, my prediction is that in a matter of decades, we will have the details worked out. And
we're talking as buddies. You really believe that's plausible, or do you really want to think it's plausible?
No, I really believe it's plausible. I don't really have a horse. My desire is to know the truth. If God is out there, I really want to know. So that is really my sincere belief, arrived at after decades of study of both science and theology in good faith.
Okay, there's 8 billion people. They all came from living parents. Countless trillions of bacteria all came from countless bacteria.
Yep.
Is any number going to convince you that life only comes from life?
No, I don't deny that life only comes from life, with one exception. A singular event in the history of this planet.
And that's a pure blind faith assumption based on, it's not?
No, I just told you it is the most likely explanation of all the explanations that I've heard. It's possible that there's a better explanation, but I haven't heard one. And in particular,
The cell theory and the law of biogenesis says life only comes from life. It's not a religious statement. And so that falsifies the notion of a natural origin.
But that's not a law.
Well, they no longer call it a law, but it was called the law for many, many years. And there's still the cell theory and observation. Countless, life only comes from life.
Yep. So you're making what's called the inductive fallacy here. The inductive fallacy is the assumption that if you observe something happening again and again and again, that it has always happened that way in the past and will always continue to happen that way in the future.
But that makes it the best explanation.
No, that's not true. I'll give you an example.
Repeatability, you said.
Excuse me?
Observation, repeatability. Life only comes from life. Trillions of times every day that's observed. And I believe, this is just, I don't know your head, your philosophy is denying observation and facts that life only comes from life.
No, I do not deny that life only comes from life, with the one exception, the singular event of abiogenesis. I'll give you an example. The sun has always rises in the east and always sets in the west. On your mode of thinking, you would conclude that it always has risen in the east and always will set in the west. And that's not true. Because,
no.
Oh, how?
I would never say, I am 100% sure life only comes from life, but I would say the overwhelming observational evidence supports that as the idea. You see? So,
well, that's what because that's what happens now, right? That's what, now that life has taken over the biosphere, now life only comes from life because life has consumed all of the available biomass. But back before there was any life, all that biomass was available for a different kind of natural process that started this cycle of life becoming life.
Okay, what is the difference between a dead dog and a living dog? Suppose all that biomass made a dead dog. All the hardware.
I'm just going to jump in. And of course, Ron, you can answer that. Time is up, so we'll make that the last question.
Yeah. So of course, not all of the biomass is always part of a living thing. Life is the cyclic process that goes through birth and development and death. And so for a while, some of that biomass returns to a non-living state, but very shortly gets then taken up by something living again and becomes life again. It's called the circle of life.
Okay, great cross-exam. We got people in the chat that are loving this right now. So I love this format. So great job from the both of you. We are jumping into cross-examination part 2. Ron is going to be asking Bill questions. So 5 minutes when you're ready.
So you took me to task for harshing on the Bible, and it's a fair criticism because you didn't use the Bible in your opening. Like I said, I was kind of flying blind because I didn't know what you were going to say, and I was basing that in large part on what I've heard from other creationists. So I'd like to just ask you, you do believe in the Bible, though, right?
Yes.
And do you believe that, let me back up a step. Do you believe that the universe is billions of years old or thousands of years old?
I believe in thousands.
Okay. And what's the scientific basis for that belief?
Oh, beautiful. I am not hedging the question. I can see where people would argue that the universe is old because of its tremendous size. If I was an old Earth person, that would be my first argument. But I do not see any evidence that this Earth is old because of erosion, mutation. The Earth is falling apart rapidly. The origin of languages only goes back about 4,000 years. But I think it takes tremendous amount of faith, and I'm an amateur. The Earth is like a cupcake, and sedimentary rock is the frosting on top. To me, that sedimentary rock got there by a flood, and there's no way that it could hold a fossil for 200 million years. Asphalt lasts 20 years. People believe organisms buried in sedimentary rock could last 230 million years of erosion. I believe that's complete faith. And people at first denied there was soft tissue in dinosaurs. And they said it's impossible. When it was proven, they said, well, somehow soft tissue can remain in dinosaurs. I could go on and on, but out of respect for you, I'll let you.
Can I? Yeah,
Sure,
just because my time is limited here. We're getting a little off topic here. So you concede that the universe could be billions of years old. It's just the Earth that's
No.
that's young.
I don't believe the universe is billions of years old,
Okay.
but I always like to be fair. I would say that's a good point about distant starlight, but I still believe that the universe is young. My
Okay.
belief is the universe is young, but I don't say, no, nobody's got any arguments that can counter anything that Bill Morgan believes.
Okay,
I
that's fine.
respect that. Yeah.
But I still want to ask the same question then. What's the scientific basis for that belief?
The scientific basis for the universe or the Earth?
For the universe. The Earth, I've heard your argument,
Okay.
and I accept it. I want to know what your scientific argument is for the young universe.
Okay, first let me preface, I'm not an astronomer, but I took an astronomy class, and there's something called the Hubble constant. And one thing we have learned is the Hubble constant has not been constant. It's changed as to the expansion of the universe. I believe that people don't know everything about space, light, time, and the expansion of the universe. I believe in a young, expanding universe. If the universe were not expanding, I think it would be a better argument for the old universe people. But I would be lying to you if I said A, B, C, D. I can prove it. But I believe there's much to be learned about space, light, and time. And again, people do change the expansion rate of the universe. They just chopped 2 billion years off the other day on the age of the universe a couple of months ago. I don't have the article. I don't know if you're familiar with that.
Sure. The number floats around, but it's always in the billions, right?
Yeah.
So you can see that the scientific consensus is that the universe is some number of billions of years old, and that this consensus was reached by people who know more about this than either of us do. Yes?
Right. But as you know, a light year measures distance. It doesn't measure time. Science can confirm the universe is huge. That doesn't confirm that the universe is old. That would be like saying Shaquille O'Neal is older than me because he's bigger than me. It's two different parameters. But I fully acknowledge why people would think the universe is old. I choose to believe it's young, and the consensus is absolutely in the opposite.
Okay, you just said you choose to believe it, which sounds very different from you think that the scientific evidence supports it.
Absolutely. Just like you choose to believe life came from non-life, I choose to believe that the universe is young, that God created everything in 6 days.
So just for the record, I don't actually choose to believe that life came from non-life. That is the explanation I find most plausible.
Semantics.
Okay. Do you believe in Noah's Ark?
I love this question. And this might surprise you. I love your question. I 100% believe in Noah's Ark. I got goosebumps. 100% faith, Ron. Do I believe that a bunch of people built that enormous ship out of wood? 100%. Okay. I believe it. Complete faith. But maybe 2% faith. Do I believe there was an actual global flood because of genealogy? You see, so one part of the Bible I believe completely on faith. If I'm wrong, I'll just say I messed up. I believed it. But I do believe in the flood account because of genealogy.
Do you believe Joshua made the sun stand still?
I believe that's interpretation of it, and I do believe that completely on faith. To me, it doesn't make any scientific sense.
Okay, guys, why don't we make that the last question? We're a little bit over on the 5 minutes. Those 2 cross exams flew by. Lots of fun. We've got over 50 people in the chat. Lots of good questions, super chat. So let's jump right into the discussion portion then, which I'm hoping for a free-flowing, organic dialogue. You both are very respectful and cordial. I doubt I'll have to do much moderating, but as you guys are discussing the topic at hand, creation or evolution, I'll gather a few more questions, and then we'll jump to the next phase of the debate. So I guess Ron just finished with his question. Bill, if you'd like to start the discussion with a question or a point, go ahead.
All right. Does it bother you that there's no living evidence for the theory of evolution? And if it is, where are they? Where are the living transitions between man and ape and bird and reptile?
It doesn't bother me at all, because you wouldn't expect there to be living transitions. That question is just a total straw man, and a misrepresentation of what the theory of evolution says. there's the straw man about changing kinds. Kinds don't change into other kinds. Kinds diversify and eventually branch off into two branches that can't interbreed with each other. It's all a very gradual process, and by the time it reaches fruition, the organisms that were part of the process in the past, they're gone, and they're gone forever.
Now, evolution is all about improvement. Would you agree? Like the next generation that lives has a better survivability.
Okay, so it depends on what you mean by improvement. Evolution, there are two very common misconceptions about evolution in this regard in creationist rhetoric. The first is that evolution strives for some kind of a goal of complexity or purpose or design or something, and that's not true. There is only one thing that evolution optimizes for, and that is reproductive fitness with respect to an environment, and that's a very important hedge. And the second thing is that this word optimization that I just used is actually not true. Evolution doesn't actually optimize for that. It just selects for the best among the current set of competing alleles. So it satisfices, it does not optimize.
Okay, what is your best scientific reason to believe that you share an ancestor with bacteria?
We share genes. The exact same reason that I believe that I share an ancestor with you, despite the fact that I can't actually trace the family lineage. We can sequence DNA now,
right?
And we can see that our DNA is going to be very similar, and both of our DNA is going to be somewhat less similar with the DNA of a chimpanzee, and even less similar to the DNA of a dog, and even less similar to the DNA of a mosquito. Although even there, I think, look this up, I think it's like 70%. Humans and mosquitoes share 70% of their DNA. And by the time you get to bacteria, I don't know what the number is, but we're still sharing genes, and more to the point, we are sharing the fundamental biochemistry and biomechanics that build up our cells. Our DNA is transcribed into proteins in exactly the same way, using exactly the same code, using exactly the same ribosomes. So we have a lot in common with bacteria that's not readily apparent.
Well, I like to say, and again, say it with respect, evolution is stories and drawings. You didn't present any evidence. You talked about gene sequencing, things like that. But do you agree that everything you're talking about is pure? Wait, let me finish. That what you're proposed was pure philosophy and not empirical observational evidence. No white men, no transitions.
No, I would not agree with that. What would you accept as evidence, particularly in the context of a debate where we're talking to each other in real time? Do you not believe that if we were to sequence our DNA, that they would come out to be similar? I mean, we haven't actually done this, so I can't hold up the sequences and say, look, see how similar they are. But surely you accept that if we were to do that, the outcome would be what I just said, no?
Between me and you, or between me and you and a chimp?
Well, let's start with me and you.
Very, very close. Okay,
how about between the two of us and a chimp?
Tremendous differences.
What do you count as tremendous differences?
Okay, just starting with the basic chromosomes, they have 48, we have 46. There's a 4% difference right there. When they talk about comparing the DNA, they often compare the similar sequences. You and I have much more in common with the chimp than we have with a mosquito, and therefore we would have similar proteins, but still the differences are tremendous genetically and physically. What would convince me is that there's transitions where perhaps someone could interbreed, but the whole field of zoology. Let me finish one second. The whole field of zoology is convincing that the theory of evolution is a dream. The classification of different animals. Go ahead.
Okay, but you didn't answer the question that I asked, which is what counts as a tremendous difference? You mentioned one number that's 4%. Is 4% a tremendous difference? Because that doesn't seem tremendous to me.
Well, with the genome of 3.2 billion base pairs, 1% difference is 32 million. A lot of people say it's 5%. Now you're up to 150 million. That's tremendous amount of differences. And the zygotes would reject each other because of enzymes, etc. There's this tremendous Grand Canyons for the atheist to jump to believe that we're related to bacteria. Observation, Ron, trillions of pieces. Bacteria makes bacteria. Apes make apes. Where are the in-betweens? Why should they all go extinct? They should still be around, but they don't exist. It's a fantasy. It's not scientific.
Why should they still be around? That makes no sense at all.
Well, you're saying they're all gone.
Yeah,
how inconvenient.
Well, they did leave a record. There is evidence of them in the fossil record. But yes, the living organisms themselves are all gone because living organisms are generally not immortal. There are a few kind of sort of exceptions. But yeah, the life is cyclic and the cycle time is short relative to the time that it takes to observe evolutionary change. And so it's not at all surprising that the actual organisms that participate in the process aren't here anymore. That's exactly what you would expect.
You might say it's not surprising, but it's also not scientific if it's not observed.
Okay, so this is another point of disagreement between us. Saying it's not scientific because it's not observed. Again, what do you count as being observed? I showed you a picture of, well, the picture I showed had about 3,000 galaxies in it. But no human has ever seen those galaxies with their naked eye. That information all comes to us indirectly. And in fact, that picture was not ever even a picture. It wasn't produced on film. It was a bunch of computer data that was collected over a period of many, many hours and assembled in a computer to produce this rendering. So does that count as being observed or not?
I will accept that they did a great job of making images of what's out there. And what does that have to do with transitional forms?
Well, you made the claim that these transitional forms are not observed.
Exactly.
And so what I'm trying to get at, what you count as being, what you would accept as being observed.
Seen.
So seen under what circumstances, right? Because you have never seen the galaxies that I claim exist. So why could you not just as easily say that those galaxies don't exist because nobody's ever actually seen them?
Well, you and I are on Earth. We don't have to trust telescopes and computer images. You and I could present transitional form evidence. And don't let me misquote you. I believe you said you don't believe in God because you don't see evidence for it.
That's right.
Well, why do you believe in transitional forms?
Because I do see evidence for them.
You just admitted they're not living. Correct?
That's true. That's true.
Okay, so what have you seen?
But not living evidence is not the same as no evidence.
Okay, what have you seen?
I've seen fossils. And I've also seen compilations of lists of transitional forms assembled by people who have seen these fossils, who've seen fossils that I have not personally seen. And I have no reason to believe that these people were not acting in good faith and reporting things that they've actually seen. So the vast majority of evidence that I have to inform my beliefs is indirect in one form or another. It's indirect through instruments. It's indirect through reports and testimony. I have very little actual direct evidence for anything. And in fact, the more indirect the evidence, the more powerful it is, because our senses are very limited and we can easily be fooled by them. And this is exactly why the scientific process was designed the way it is, and scientific instruments are designed the way they are in order to get past these limitations and biases that we have. So you've got it exactly backwards. Your insistence on seeing things firsthand weakens the process. It doesn't strengthen it.
Well, that's what science, well, you know science better than me. Your accomplishments are tremendous, but science relies on observation, not a consensus of what people have written about.
Absolutely, but what counts as observation? Is it
Seeing,
things that you've seen
touching, observing.
observed directly with your naked eye, or observed through an instrument, or observed through testimony?
That's a great place to start. Wouldn't you agree? Isn't that a good place to start, to see 8 billion humans all had human parents? Isn't that a good place to start?
It's a great place to start, but it's a really bad place to end, because if you stop at the things you can directly observe, you end up with the flat earth cosmology of the ancient Babylonians, because that's all the information they had. I mean, the ancient Babylonian cosmology it seems quaint and almost funny today, but back then it was the best explanation that they had for the data that they had, because they didn't have telescopes and they didn't have the means to travel to the ends of the earth to see that it was actually round. So based on the data that they had, a flat earth cosmology with a dome that makes the sky is a perfectly reasonable explanation for all that. It's only when you go beyond and transcend your bare senses with instruments and with a process that allows you to trust the testimony of other people and eliminates human biases, that you can get to where we are today in the modern world.
Okay, here's a fun question then. I listened to every word you said. With every day when they find new things in biochemistry, does it get simpler or more and more complex?
More complex.
Exactly.
Our understanding gets more complete, and therefore the parts, the things that we understand become more complex, because it is a very complex system. Biology is a very complex system.
And absolutely. I propose, and I've talked to biochemists, every 3 months, John Sanford told me they have to throw out what they thought they knew about biochemistry, because it gets more and more complex. I propose the increased complexity that they keep finding is an argument, I didn't say absolute proof, that there's a designer with an IQ beyond belief, instead of it happened by chance once a long time ago. And just think about that. By chance, an organism began that can do the biochemistry today. But would you agree that the more complex people learn biochemistry is, the more likely it's the result of design instead of a happy accident? So
let's be clear. The organism that started it all, first of all, was not an organism. It was just almost certainly a bare molecule of some sort. And it was not anywhere near as complex as what we have today. That complexity evolved over time. John Sanford makes this claim, and intelligent design advocates in general make this claim, that the process of evolution cannot create information. That's just wrong. It's demonstrably wrong. And the part of the process that creates the information is the natural selection. So the process of evolution essentially does how?
Ron? No, I said, wow, Ron.
Oh.
Natural selection eliminates information. Your dream is in mutations making new information. Do you stand corrected?
It is an interplay between those two.
How does natural selection create new information?
So in order to explain this, we first have to understand what information actually is. There's an entire field of study called information theory, which, I mean, you can take an entire college course on this. So it's nearly impossible to summarize accurately in the span of the minute or two that I can give it here. But one of the key insights of information theory is that what information actually is a correspondence between the states of two physical systems. So skipping over a lot of steps, the correspondence in biological systems is the correspondence between the state of our DNA and the phenotype, the kind of organism that is built up by the particular DNA sequence. And that can be constructed over time, essentially through trial and error, which is exactly what evolution does. It tries one thing, And if it doesn't work, that attempt dies and it tries something else, except it does all this in vast parallelism. So evolution is constantly trying, quite literally, billions, if not trillions, of different combinations all at the same time. And they're all being filtered out by natural selection all at the same time. And the net result of that process playing out over billions of years is the complexity that we see today.
So do you retract your statement that natural selection adds information? It just selects and eliminates information.
It's semantics.
That's not. It's foundational to your belief. Because you have to go up the information ladder. And a minute ago, you claimed natural selection can do that.
The information is the correlation between the sequence of DNA and the phenotype. The complexity results because it turns out that complex things have survival value. There's nothing inherently good or desirable about complexity for its own sake. It just turns out that over billions of years, that when complex organisms have competed against less complex ones, the complex ones have won. And the best example of that is us. We are the most complex organisms on Earth, and we are kicking some whoop ass over every other life form on here. That doesn't make us better. It just, in any absolute sense, it just makes us better at surviving and reproducing.
Okay, but yes or no, do you think natural selection adds information to a population?
I don't even know what that means. What do you mean by adding information to a population? In order to answer questions like this, you have to be precise. To answer a question about adding information, I have to know, well, first of all, how are you going to measure this information? How do I know where there's more information, where there's less information? If I have a population of 2 humans, is that more or less information than a population of 1 trillion bacteria?
I'm not being condescending. I know you're smart enough to understand my question. And you're smart enough to wiggle around it.
I really don't. And the reason I don't understand, and it's not that I'm disclaiming my intelligence. It's that I'm saying that your question makes assumptions about the meanings of the words that you're using that simply aren't true. And in particular, the assumption that you're making is that the phrase adding information is something that can be objectively assessed independent of any other consideration. And that's simply not true.
Okay, do you remember my dog example?
Yes.
I'm not bragging. It's gotten many compliments from evolutionists as well. I've used it many times. In my example, am I correct in saying those 2 dogs lost information in their genome? Their offspring lost the ability to make a hairless dog.
Yes, I would say that's fair.
But no information was added.
That's right. In that particular example, no.
Okay, good. All right. I rest my case.
Well, no, because you've left out a very important part, which is that after they lose the genes for making hairless dogs, they undergo random mutation as they continue to reproduce. And one of those random mutations could discover, and I put that in scare quotes because I don't want to imply that there's any kind of design or intentionality here, but purely by accident, discover some informational pathway that improves their reproductive fitness relative to what they had been. And that is the process that adds the information over time.
Okay, so it's mutations, so we cleared that up.
That's right. But it's not, again, the mutations themselves are just random. Those don't add information either. It's the interplay between the random mutations and the natural selection that ultimately, over the course of a long period of time, ends up producing information.
Okay.
Next question.
Okay. I asked the question, how does an intelligent guy like you, and you are, study things like eyelids, tear ducts, corneas, retinas, lenses, optic nerves, rods, cones, visual cortexes, not see design? It's a first grade level question. I don't get it. How do you not see design there?
That's a great question. The reason I don't see design is because it actually looks, when you dig down into the details, very different from the kinds of things that are designed. So for starters, the design is really not all that great. You will notice that I'm wearing glasses, and on top of these glasses that I have to wear in order to really be able to see, I also have macular degeneration, so I'm losing my foveal vision. I can't fix that. If I were designed, I would hope that my designer would have designed me in such a way that I had interchangeable parts, so that when parts of me started to break, I could just swap out the failing part for a new one. And that's not the case.
Okay, are you making standards for you to believe in God? If the design was 5% better, I would believe in you, God. But corneas, retinas, optic nerves, lenses, that's not enough evidence for me.
Like I said,
what you said.
Well, that is what I said, but I'm just getting started here. There's lots of other things that are missing. So, for example, the things that are designed, we can also go back and see the process by which they were designed. We can identify the people who did the designing. We can see the designs. We can find the drawings and the factories that actually built the thing. So it's not just characteristics of the end result that makes us believe that things are designed. It's also the fact that we can make inquiries and observations of the actual process. And in the case of God, I don't want to sound condescending here, but he's just very inaccessible.
I'd love to talk to you more about that. That's one of my passions.
Oh, let's talk about it.
Oh, no, well, we will later, okay?
Okay.
But I got to ask you this one. And again, we're just two buddies trying to figure out life.
No, absolutely. Let's keep going. This is great. Okay.
Suppose you and I were in England about 20 years ago, and we're in our private helicopter that you own because you have more money. And I'm glad you have a sense of humor. But you see crop circles.
Yep.
Would you believe the crop circles happened by design or chance? The young audience probably doesn't even know what we're talking about. Well, if you want to think for a second, I'll let you. In England, about 20 years ago, in farmers' fields, there were these big circles that showed up in the morning. Go ahead. Would you think the crop circles happened by design or chance?
So I'm old enough to remember this.
Oh, yeah.
So I can actually kind of sort of reconstruct my mental state as this story developed. So the first crop circles, they're called crop circles because the earliest ones were circles. And it was a mystery. And I remember reading all kinds of speculation, and I remember thinking, wow, that's kind of weird, but not really having any particular belief at the time about whether, I was pretty sure that they weren't caused by aliens, which is one of the things that people were speculating about. I was pretty sure that it was either a hoax or caused by some kind of natural phenomenon that just hadn't been identified yet. I wasn't placing big money bets on which of those would eventually turn out to be the truth. As time went on, the designs got more and more elaborate, and my odds tilted in favor of a hoax, which it eventually turned out to be.
Welcome aboard to the creation side, Ron.
Well,
the more complex it is, the more obvious.
You're saying creation is a hoax?
No, design is not the hoax. Chance is the hoax. The more complex the crop circles got, Ron said, there's got to be people doing it. You stopped believing in natural causes for those crop circles.
Well, okay, except there is also this other possibility, which is that it was aliens, right? That was another hypothesis that was on the table.
Design, right? It's still design.
Okay, fair enough. Yeah, I could not think of any natural process that would have created the more complicated designs, but that's simply not true for life. I can think of a natural process that creates this kind of complexity, and it is evolution. And that process has been fleshed out in incredible detail over the last 150 years. And all of the arguments against it are arguments that I've seen are either things that are genuine scientific problems, although those are rare. The much more common argument is an argument from incredulity or just a flat out bad faith misrepresentation of what evolution actually says. And that's all I've seen.
For evidence. Or a plea for evidence.
Well, so I count that as a bad faith argument because there really is overwhelming evidence, and evolutionists have exhibited this evidence over and over and over again, and only to be met with, well, where's the evidence? Where are the transitional forms?
Exactly.
Where's this? Where's that? There is just so much of it that anybody who asks where is it has either not done their homework or is arguing in bad faith. Now, if you were to say, look, I've looked at the purported evidence and this is something that's claimed as evidence and it doesn't look like evidence to me, that would be different. But simply saying flat out, there's no evidence, period, end of story, sorry.
Yeah, that's what I propose, that there's not evidence that you are related to bacterium.
And in this very debate, I have presented you with an argument that I claim can be backed by evidence, not that I can produce to you right now, but which, given the time to go and look it up, I could produce.
Well, you did say we both make proteins.
Yep.
Right? You make proteins, bacteria makes proteins.
That's right.
We both have genes. We both have DNA.
That's right.
They don't even have a nucleus. How'd they get a nucleus?
I don't know exactly. Most likely, so we back up a step and make a general observation about the kinds of things that turn out to provide reproductive fitness advantages. And one of those things is the ability to draw boundaries around yourself and make barriers that divide you from your environment. Even a bacterium is actually a very advanced organism.
Oh, yeah. Praise God.
And it's by the time you get to a bacterium, you're actually about halfway to a human in terms of the complexity. A lot of the basic biochemistry of life already exists in a bacterium. And one of the big innovations that a bacterium was able to make was to make a cell wall. That's not an easy thing to do. And being able to make a cell wall provides a tremendous evolutionary advantage over competitors that can't make cell walls. And it turns out that making a boundary around your nucleus also provides you with a tremendous evolutionary advantage in certain environments over your competitors that can't make those, can't draw those boundaries. So the exact mechanism by which it happened, I do not know. But the general story is that at some point, some bacterium, through random mutation, discovered a way to make a barrier around its nucleus, and this provided it with a competitive advantage in terms of reproductive fitness, and so it made more of itself than its competitors, and now we are the descendants of that one bacterium who discovered that secret billions of years ago.
Is the most complex crop circle or the simplest bacterium more complex?
The simplest bacterium is vastly more complex.
And I say this as a, I know we're on the internet. I say this as a friend. I honestly think emotions or bias is clouding that brilliant mind of yours to conclude crop circles are a design and bacterium is a design. And offline, this isn't like, I'd be happy to talk to you, but I don't want pride entering into the debate. But Ron, you're too smart to think the human eye happened by chance. The brain, the stomach, my dog.
You're right. I am. I don't think it happened by chance. I think it happened through a process that involved both chance and a deterministic component.
What's the deterministic
both of those
component?
Natural selection.
That eliminates. It doesn't add. Natural selection eliminates information from a gene.
I thought we've been through this already.
Right. Well, you brought it back, not me. Yep, you brought that up.
Well, that being said, gentlemen, I do want to point out that on the clock, I have 3 minutes left for discussion. Did you guys want to maybe take a couple minutes each to kind of wrap up your thoughts, wrap up your points, make sure you feel like, you're confident you addressed everything you wanted to? It's up to you.
Was there some other question you wanted to ask me? I feel like I've been answering more questions than I've been asking, which I'm perfectly happy to do.
Okay.
Well,
and I'm
if you'd
perfectly happy
like,
to
Ron.
continue.
Yeah, Ron, because I don't like, to make the debaters feel obligated to continue the discussion after the timer's up. But if you'd like, I can put another, let's say, 10 minutes on the discussion and let you ask Bill some questions, Ron.
I'm enjoying this immensely.
Good.
I think
Okay.
it's productive. I'm happy to continue. I'm happy to change topics, whatever you want to do, Bill.
And
Okay.
I mean this, if you were my neighbor, we'd be best buddies. I mean it. You're a wonderful human being.
Thank you.
And we disagree. And I'm not
No,
just saying that.
Absolutely. I'm 100% on board with you on that.
Okay, well, I just want to respect both your time. So why don't I put another? I'll put some more time on the clock. And Ron, if you want, you can kind of, if you feel like Bill's been asking more questions, you can direct the conversation to the next topic you feel fit and ask a question if you'd like.
Well,
I got a beauty for you, Ron, if you want.
Go for it.
Okay, and I ask in friendship.
Yep.
What do you think will happen to you after you die?
I think I will go back to the void and rejoin and be in the same state that I was in before I was born.
Okay. Is there any purpose or meaning to life?
I make purpose and meaning in my life. I don't think that there is any transcendent purpose or meaning to it, although I don't completely rule it out. I would like for there to be. I mean, I think I'm not happy about this conclusion that I'm going to rejoin the void. I'm not particularly looking forward to it. It would be great if it turned out that after I died, my consciousness somehow managed to outlive my body, and I went back to, I don't know, the great Blockbuster store in the sky where I rent the next life that I then go and live, or something like that. I don't know. But I have no reason to believe that that's actually going to happen.
Okay. Is it your headphones are in effect? Was there a cause for your headphones? And you know where this is going.
Yeah, of course I know where it's going.
But there was a cause for your headphones, right?
Yes, but two things about the Kalam cosmological argument. Number one, it is not the case that everything that all effects have causes. There are quantum mechanical effects that don't have causes. And also, just because, even if I concede that this universe was caused by something, it's still a very long way from that concession to the God of the Bible, or even to any kind of a deity or any kind of afterlife, or any connection between the thing that caused the universe and me. I have absolutely no reason to believe that the thing that caused the universe has any reason to care about me. I'm just an accidental thing, a little speck of dust in a remote corner of this incredibly vast universe.
Well, I'll make a quick statement on that. I have a dog, which I love, and I study my dog. Do you have a dog or a pet?
I had one. Unfortunately, he passed on. And now we can't have one for various life circumstances or preventing it. But our neighbor just got a puppy, and he's adorable.
Okay, I want you to study that puppy, Ron, and think of Bill. Think of old Bill. Yeah. I propose every hair on that puppy is perfect. The hair in the ear is perfect for being in the ear. The hair on its back is perfect on its back. The hair in the ear all points to keep the water out. The back is for warmth. I believe in a God, Ron, that is so huge. He designed and cares about every hair on your neighbor's puppy. Now, if God cares about every hair on a puppy, does God care about you? I'm not saying you believe in God, but doesn't that make sense? That God is big enough to care about hairs on puppies. He cares about Ron Garret.
Does he care about the people who are losing their lives and homes in the fires?
Absolutely.
He has a strange way of showing it.
Oh, I'd be happy to talk to you about suffering. This is a planet of death, suffering, and extinction. But to quote, you ever heard of, you know your stuff. Have you heard of Greg Laurie? Pastor?
No, the name does not ring a bell.
He's a famous pastor. He said something I really enjoyed. He goes, everybody talks about the afterlife. Greg Laurie said, this is the pre-life. No matter, even if you avoid the fires, Ron, you know, you're not a 10-year-old. You've gone through a lot of garbage and pain and suffering and grief in your life. And we all do. But I believe that this is the pre-life. And if a loving God exists, this can't be the only life, or else he'd be a sadist. I love to tell people that. God's a sadist if we just die and go in the grave. It's like, hey, thanks for cancer for my mom and dad.
That's one of the reasons I don't believe in him.
And that's your right. But you have so much to be thankful for. Your eyes, your ears, your teeth, your fingernails, your fingers.
Absolutely. I live a blessed life. I'm really happy to be alive. I'm enjoying my life. My life is much better than I deserve. In fact, that's another reason I don't believe in God, is because he has absolutely no reason to be nice to me, because I sometimes joke that I actually talk to God. And he talks back. I tell him that I don't believe in him, and he says that's okay. I can get along without you.
Oh, I'm sure he didn't say that, but I like good humor as much as anyone. But
well, I mean, in fact, God has never answered me. I have starting the reason that I've been studying the Bible for 43 years is because when I was 12, I went to a YMCA summer camp and had a brief conversion experience. Which ended when I actually started reading the Bible. And starting at that point in earnest, and ever since then, I have told God, if you're out there, I'm ready to hear from you whenever you're ready to pick up the phone. So far, he hasn't called.
Okay. Could I share a Bible verse with you, my friend?
Sure.
John, can you write it down? John 10, 20.
But I should caution you that I believe that the Bible is a work of human literature, and in particular Bronze Age mythology. So a Bible verse is not likely to persuade me of anything. And it's also unlikely that I'm not familiar with it, because I've studied the Bible quite extensively. But by all means, go for it.
Okay, well, little tennis analogy. I used to play a lot of tennis, and I was playing my buddy, and he zipped it down the line, and I just watched it go. And I got goosebumps. You can't see him. His name was Ricky. And he goes, Bill, always stick your racket out. You never know. And the rest of my little tennis career, if I was playing you and you zing it, I'm sticking my racket out. You never know. So I'm going to throw a Bible verse out to you. Who knows what's going to happen? But if you want to jot it, I think it's a wonderful verse. John, could you write it down? John 10:24. Okay. So Jesus is walking around minding his own business. That's not what the Bible verse says. And it said, and the Jews, these were the Jewish leaders who were threatened by him, gathered around him and said, how long will you keep us in suspense? If you are the Christ, tell us plainly. Jesus answered them, I told you, and you do not believe. The works that I do in my Father's name bear witness to me. You've heard the one about the guy in the boat, right? Dear God, please save me.
Yes.
Real quick, the guy's in a boat. Dear God, save me. A helicopter comes. He goes, nope, I'll wait for God to save me. And a bigger boat came. Nope, I'll wait for God to save me. The guy drowns, and God says, why didn't you trust me? I sent you a boat and a helicopter. I think the evidence is already there, Ron, and you're hedging by waiting more. Your pupil, your retina, your cornea, your shoulder, your elbow are things I believe you should be thankful for. But you're choosing to look at these fires and saying, what an awful, wicked God. Look at these fires, instead of what a great God for every blood cell.
Okay, let's take this intelligent design hypothesis seriously. I suppose I concede that I am in the process of intelligent design. How do I know that I'm designed by God and not by intelligent aliens?
That's another great question. Step number one is there a designer? It could be, I don't know if they still use it, the spaghetti monster. It could be Allah, it could be aliens, etc.
My favorite is Loci. But
no idea.
Loci is the Norse god of mischief. And if I were to seriously advance a hypothesis that explains everything that I see that involved a deity, the Norse god, a mischievous god, is a much better fit to the data than a kind, loving god.
Well, good. Hey, you're on your way. As long as you believe in a designer, you're on.
I'm trying to keep an open mind.
Good. I hope you are. Well, so I'm not the world's greatest expert on this, but if God exists, well, first, this is what I say to people. I can give you 2 facts that I think prove there's a God. Would you like to hear what they are, Ron?
Absolutely.
Your eyes.
I think intelligent aliens could pull those off.
Okay. Okay, 2 facts that I think God loves you. Your eyes. And they're a wonderful gift that you wouldn't sell for $10 million. Your ears are a gift. And once again, in life, we have a choice to be thankful for what we have or to be bitter about the problems. And we all have problems. Believe me, these people with the fires. My daughter, when she was 2, had leukemia. Guess what my opinion of God was?
I daren't guess.
Bitterly pissed off at God. I said, God, I know you exist. I know you made red blood cells, white blood cells, platelets. I'm sorry that I am mad at you, but please help me get through these things. So I hope you don't think that Christians are naive to pain and suffering and grief. But if this was the only life, he'd be a sadist. And he's not a sadist. This is the pre-life, in my opinion, if he's a loving God, which he is.
So you promised me 2 facts. That was just one.
You have 2 eyes.
Oh.
I can give you 100 if you want. Your nose, your teeth, your tongue, your saliva. Have you ever thanked God for your saliva? Wonderful gift.
I think that's probably as good a place as any to leave it and go to Q&A. What do you think?
Sure.
Okay, guys. Well, I got to say that was an awesome discussion. The chat is having a great time. Very lively chat. We've had over 50 people nearly the entire time. So like I said, you guys are a couple of the fan favorites. So why don't do you guys want to wrap it up in a concluding statement, or do you want to go right into the Q&A? It's totally up to you guys.
I had some fancy slides that I could share, but I think I'll just tell a story, and it's not meant to be slamming anybody.
Sure, go ahead.
I've used it in other debates. There was once a man in Indiana who was convinced he was dead. And all the people tried to convince him, you're not dead. No, I'm dead. So they gathered up all their money, and they got the world's smartest psychologist from Harvard to come out to Indiana to work with the guy. So he flies out, he meets the guy, and he says, I understand you think you're dead. He goes, no, I don't think it. I am dead. And he said, do dead people bleed? And he said, no. So the Harvard guy got out a pin, pricked him, he started bleeding. The guy said, I was wrong. Dead people do bleed. The point being, often the hypothesis is driving the conclusion, not the observation. I think, I'm not picking on Ron, I think everybody knows God exists, but they choose not to honor, acknowledge, or give thanks to him for emotional reasons and try to come up with reasons alternative to the existence of God. So I used to claim to be an atheist for 12 years. I was working on a ship in Jacksonville. I was with 5 other guys at dinner. I choked on a piece of fish. First thing I did stupidly was run to a bathroom because I was embarrassed. I'd rather choke than be embarrassed. As an atheist, the second thing I said, dear God, please, please don't let me die. I got the fish out and I said, okay, stop looking at me. I'm okay for now. But I do believe that we're spiritual beings and that deep down we do know there's a God. And my hope is that Ron does become open-minded, become thankful for what he has, and realizing this is a loving God, this is a temporary life, and he promises afterlife for those who have him as Lord, and that means the boss. And you seem like a very moral guy, Ron. You're more than halfway there than the bacteria is to humans. I think it's the best life, but more importantly, I think it's the true life. And I hope you seek it with an open mind.
Awesome. Well, thank you for that concluding statement there, Bill. I appreciate it. And Ron, some final words?
So I believe you when you tell me that you believe these things. And I also believe you when you tell me that you are doing your best to be respectful. And up until now, you have been. But when you say that you know that everybody knows that there's a God, and that somebody who professes not to believe in him must be doing so for some ulterior motive or in bad faith, that is deeply disrespectful and insulting. I, like I said, I've been studying this stuff for 43 years. I have talked to more Christians than I can count. I have considered their arguments with as much of an open mind as I can muster. If I have reached the conclusions that I have because of some mental deficit or inability to see the truth, that's still on God because he made me this way. I have done the best that I can to convince you that I am honorable and trustworthy and not trying to deceive and seeking the truth in good faith. I don't know how I can convince you of that if you're not already persuaded, except to reiterate it. But if you want to be respectful, don't tell me that I know that God exists, because I don't. And that's just the truth of the matter.
Okay, well, thank you for that concluding words there, Ron. Great debate, great job from the both of you. Like I said, everybody has had a good time. We really appreciate it. We've also got some good questions here. And I should say, it looks like we've got an after show on Nephilim Free's channel. And according to Doki Doki Bible Club, there will be ice cream. So should be fun. And why don't we get right into the questions and super chats. I've pinned Neff's channel for anybody who wants to join it. Anybody's invited. They are always open mic. So let's get right into it. So first super chat. And Ron, I appreciate you being a good sport. That a lot of times, the questions are at you because we've got a Christian-dominated audience. But
yep. Bring it on.
Makes it a lot of fun. You're a good sport, and don't worry, Bill. You can also give your thoughts on it. We'll make sure it's a good Q&A. Okay, let's get right to it. So, super chat from George Bond, $5. Thank you so much. He says, "At Standing for Truth, question for Ron. If evolution is documented, where are all the common ancestors? Are lines on paper documentation? Question mark.
The common ancestors are dead. And some of them have left fossil evidence behind, but they're dead. Simple as that.
Thank you for the response. Bill, did you have a quick comment?
Well, we hash that over. I would just say dead men do bleed. My hypothesis is true. I don't care what the evidence is. But George, I hope we're still friends, just because we disagree. Okay.
And of course, to be fair, Ron, it was your question. The person whose question it's for always gets the last word. If you had something to say, Ron.
Nope.
Okay, let's move right to the next one. Then we've got Doki Doki Bible Club, $5 super chat. Ooh, question for you, Bill, Mr. Popularity tonight. The question is, Bill, do you still have a fedora from your atheist days?
I used to be a Mason, but I never made it to get a fez. So that's the best I could. My dad was a Shriner. He had a fez. But I think a fedora is a hat, right? What?
Oh, sorry. Never mind.
No. I want Ron. I love what your thoughts are. What'd you say?
Nothing. You said something about Shriners that made it sound like you were implying that they were atheists, and that would be news to me. Okay.
No.
Okay, I just
Shriner, to be a Shriner, you have to believe in a creator.
That's what I thought. So
when I was
I just misinterpreted what you said. I'm sorry.
If only we knew you, Bill, back in your Mason days.
Wait, I got to say something that a lot of people won't like. Person for person, the greatest people I ever knew were the Masons. And I know a lot of, and I'm not a Mason anymore. I know a lot of people think they're trying to overthrow the government. But I was a Mason, and all we did was drink beer, bowl, and play softball. So
That's probably because you were the lowest a Mason
I
could
was.
be.
Maybe I didn't
You had to
know.
make your way up to find out, the deep, dark, dirty secrets.
Yeah, if you were a real Mason, you wouldn't be telling us you were a Mason.
Yeah, exactly. The real Masons, like Ron, wouldn't be. No, I'm just kidding.
Oh, Ron, you are? Are you a Mason?
No, I'm
Could
just
neither confirm nor deny.
He's got the right response. He's been trained. Okay,
Nice people.
so we've got
Indoctrinated.
super chat from the Film Free. Let's see. Question for well, I'm going to read this word for word. He says, Bill, since changing allele frequencies causes a loss of genetic information, how can it participate in the production of new features? I think that's probably for you, though, Ron.
It does sound like it would be. Can you read that again?
Yes. So he says, since changing allele frequencies causes a loss of genetic information, how can it participate in the production of new features?
I don't think it's true that changing allele frequencies causes a loss of information. So, but I guess I should just kind of do a blanket disclaimer so that people don't waste their super chat money. Hitting me with questions about nitty-gritty details of biology is probably not going to be productive because I'm not a biologist, and I just will have to say sorry, I don't know the answer.
Nope, no problem. No, that was a good answer. So let's go. This is just a super chat from Doki Doki Bible Club, $10. Thank you so much, Doki Doki. We appreciate it. Enjoy your moderator status. You've earned a hammer. So let's go to next question from Anthony Maurice. Another question for you, Ron. Like I said, you're a good sport. He says, Ron, what makes you think abiogenesis is so plausible? Because they can't even produce life in the lab under highly manipulated, engineered, contrived processes. Go ahead, Ron. Take your time.
Well, just because we haven't figured it out yet doesn't mean we're not going to figure it out. It's probably not easy. Nature had an entire planet worth of test tube to play, and a couple of million years to play around with before nature got it right. We have orders of magnitude less time and material, and so it's not too surprising that we don't get it right away. The jury's still out. And I don't see anything known about what nature is like that would make it fundamentally impossible for it to happen. So my money is still on it happened, and eventually we'll figure out how.
Okay, and as usual, Bill, if you'd like a response.
Okay. I've had a lot of polite discussions on this, and I'm often a very giving, generous guy. I will give the skeptic amino acids by chance. I will give the skeptic proteins by chance. I will give them RNA, DNA, proteins, I already said that, ribosomes, cell walls, organs, bones. I'll give the atheist a fully dead dog by chance. Bring it to life. People in the lab are spending all kinds of time to try to figure out how to get amino acids together to make a protein. Bring a dead dog to life. There's more to life than biology, chemistry, and physics. There's a spark to life. A polite question to Ron: what is the difference between a living dog and a dead dog? Is it biology, chemistry, physics, or is there more to life than chemistry, biology, and physics?
Life is a process that includes all of those things. By the time you get to a dog, it's a very complicated process. And so when that process ends and starts to decay, it's very hard to restore it. But give me a bacterium and a couple of billion years, and I'll give you a living dog.
The jury's out on that one.
Okay, well, great responses from the both of you. Let's get right to the next question. We've got another super chat from George Bond. Thank you so much, George. Question is for Ron. Wiki explains the metamorphic process, but not the evolution of the process. How did the caterpillar become a butterfly?
Yeah, I've been asked that before. Again, I don't know. I do know that there's a Wikipedia page that has the answer on it. You just go look it up and read it. I don't have the answer memorized, sorry.
Okay, awesome. Let's move right along then.
Wait, can I do it real quick?
Yeah. Go ahead, Bill. Go ahead.
The key to a caterpillar becoming a butterfly is the information in the genes for this to happen. And we have milkweed. We're big butterfly fans here. The information, which has to come from an information source, is what caused the complete change. It's like driving a tricycle into a garage, closing the door, and out comes a jet. But the information has to be imputed from an information source, and that would be, I believe, the God of the Bible.
Did you have a response, Ron?
Nah, I'll leave that alone.
Okay, let's go right to the next one. We've got caustic soda. Question is for Ron. Do things look designed? If yes, then why are you avoiding the obvious? They're coming at you, Ron.
What things? I presume the questioner means, do living things look designed? And yeah, if you give them a cursory look through a certain kind of lens, yeah, they can appear to be designed because they are fit for a particular purpose, and that purpose is to reproduce and survive. And nature has discovered complex mechanisms to further that purpose. And it's really amazing and complicated, and involves lots of parts that have to fit together and work exactly the right way, which is a characteristic that the result of this process shares with the result of the design process. They are nonetheless not the same process.
And Bill, if you had a response?
I had a question for Ron. Does nature have an IQ? What is nature?
No, nature does not have an IQ.
Does it have a will?
No, all these things are properties of brains, and nature does not have a brain. Nature makes brains, but it doesn't have a brain.
How can nature make a brain if it doesn't have a brain?
That's, well, by evolution.
Okay. All right.
Because genes that make organisms with brains survive better than genes that make organisms without brains, because brains let you adapt more quickly to your environment. It's really, it's simple. It's almost a tautology.
Okay. And the information came from nature, who can impute information, right?
That's right. It came through essentially a blind search process that was guided by natural selection for reproductive fitness.
All right.
Awesome. You guys keep it fun. I'll tell you that much. Look, another question.
I didn't do that. I didn't do that.
Praise, your soundboard there is his moment to shine. He got a new soundboard, and sometimes he has too much fun with it. So I think you scared all three of us there, Praise.
That's proof of design. Pressure relief valve.
Yes, the soundboard was definitely designed.
No, the fart was
I don't think that's what Bill was referring to.
Thank you. Ron gets me.
Ron, I think he was doing that to us over on Modern Day Debate a couple weeks ago, too. Okay, so next one, kind of similar to the question we just had. Ron, it's for you. Surprise, surprise.
You guys got to start sending Bill some love here. You got to start feeling like he's wasted his time.
So we've got a question for Ron. I believe that's you, Ron. Is DNA a bad design? If yes, then why are we lying to? Oh, okay. I think he meant trying to replicate the storage system of DNA.
DNA a bad design? It's not a design. It is a solution to a problem that nature stumbled upon by accident. Whether it is a particularly good solution to this problem, I don't know, because it's the only one that we know of. So there might be other solutions out there. That's actually one of the big questions in science: is there life on other planets, and if so, did nature discover some other way of building it up from scratch? That's one of the big mysteries of science, and I would love to live long enough to learn the answer to that.
And go ahead, Bill, if you had a response.
I sure do. In 1775, the British were in Boston, and the colonials were afraid they were going to attack, and they were going to attack. They decided, hey, let's put one lantern up in the church if it's by land that they're leaving Boston, two if they're leaving by sea. That's a code. A code is where you take information, and Ron knows this way better than me. You take information, put it in another form, and it's interpreted by someone else. Codes are always the result of intelligence and design on the sender and the receiver. DNA is the world's most complex code that I can think of, and I believe the two lanterns in Boston were the result of design, and the code that makes up DNA is also the result of design. DNA is full of information to communicate to make proteins. Both are designs, the lanterns and the DNA.
Okay, if you're okay there, Ron, we can move to the next one. Or, of course, you get the final word.
We should probably have another debate just on this topic, because it's simply not true that codes are the result of design. But explaining why is a long story that I would love to tell. I would love to have the opportunity to tell. But in the rejoinder to a question, the answer is much too long.
No
Could I
problem.
volunteer my buddy, John Maddox, to do that debate?
No,
I told you everything I know about DNA, Ron. What?
John still owes me some papers.
Oh, Ron and John got a love-hate relationship.
What would you debate, John?
Of course, in a minute. I've been looking forward to our rematch ever since we first got together.
Well, it's going to be much anticipated. I'm telling you.
That.
When we set up that rematch, John Maddox versus Ron Garret round 2, it's going to break the internet, I tell you. We'll wait another couple months just to build up the hype, and then we'll set it. Rocky 5.
The gauntlet's been laid, John Maddox. Don't run. He won't.
It'll be the real Batman versus Superman. We're definitely setting that up. Okay, so we've got a good question here because it's for the both of you. And I'm glad we got a good laugh there because laughter is the best medicine. So Samuel, question for both. Which explanation requires the least amounts of assumptions and or trust of others, a creation or evolution? Whoever would like to start, go ahead.
Well, I think it's obvious what we're each going to say, right?
Well, we could start with the crop circles. One person could investigate it. One person could listen to a consensus and have their mind changed. But I think two open-minded people would look at the crop circles and perhaps debate who the designer is, but not that there is a design. And I believe the human heart, lungs, liver, kidney, spleen is much more complex, and that is the result of design. I just want to reference one of my consensus. When I took a college astronomy class, the professor absolutely said this: eyes are properly arranged stardust. So I came home to my daughter, who was 5 at the time, and I said, Rachel, honey, and she survived cancer. She had leukemia, but she survived. I said, Rachel, do you think eyes are properly arranged stardust? She looked up at me and said, no, Daddy, they're too gooey. I believe the professor has more knowledge than my daughter, but I believe my daughter has more wisdom to conclude that the eyes result of design. So I think it doesn't take consensus to realize the eyes of design. And I say that with respect, Ron.
No, that's perfectly fine. Everything you've said has been perfectly fine. The only thing I would ask is, don't tell me what's truly in my heart of hearts is different than what I've told you that it is, because it isn't.
And then, actually, Ron, did you get a chance to answer that specific question? Or?
I'm going to pass.
Okay.
I can't think of anything to say on that hasn't been said a zillion times.
Of course, no problem. So next question, super chat from Jamie Russell. Thank you so much, $5. Is SETI a legitimate scientific pursuit? Not directed towards anybody, but I'm guessing it might be for you, Ron.
Yeah, I think it's definitely a legitimate scientific pursuit. And in fact, one of the most interesting scientific results of the last few decades is the fact that SETI didn't find anything. And the search that they did was far from complete, but it was comprehensive enough that the failure to find anything constrained the possibility of finding something in the future significantly. So it's less likely now than it was before SETI that we'll find intelligent aliens. Which is, it's not to say that we won't find life, because the bar for life is much lower than the bar for intelligence. At this point, my money is actually against ever finding intelligent aliens.
And of course, Bill, if you'd like to respond.
What about intelligent humans? Just kidding. Thank you very much. No, that's a joke. SETI, and Ron knows way more than me, but SETI is my understanding, huge antennas listening to outer space for a code or for information. And this is huge in creation versus evolution. If the SETI experimenters would have heard a code or a sequence of information, they would have said, hey, there's an intelligent source to that code. But these same people could study DNA and say, no, there's no intelligence behind that code or that source of information.
That's right. And like I said, the reason for that is longer than I can give you here in this context. Would be happy to reconvene or offline and explain it to you, but there is an explanation.
Okay, so next one is Super Chat from Jungle Jargon, $10. Thank you so much, JJ. We appreciate the support. This one's slightly long, so I will just read it word for word. Question is for Dr. Ron. Why continue in your idolatry of naturalism when nothing can make or direct itself? You can't use directed mechanisms for a purpose as evidence of no direction, working mechanism, or
okay. You know what? I'm just going to stop you, because the minute I heard idolatry, I decided I'm not going to answer that question.
No problem, Ron, and we apologize if there is any offense taken there.
I'm not offended. It's just it's not a constructive question. You know, you're accusing me of idolatry, and I don't practice idolatry, so.
Totally understandable. Now, I will say this: the live chat was so lively tonight. We've probably got questions enough to go all night long. I'll just go with. I'll pick two more random. I'll make sure I get the last super chat. So this is the last one from Nephilim Free. Thank you so much. Just a comment, says love for standing for truth. I appreciate that, Nephilim Free. He's also got the after show, so make sure you guys, anybody in the chat wants to join that, go ahead. And let's see, last one here. Question for Ron. If Christianity was true, would you be a Christian?
I hope so. The reason I hedged is because I can imagine a world where Christianity is true, but the evidence that it is true is withheld from me. And so I can imagine a world where Christianity is true and I'm still not a Christian. This world might even be such a world. The only thing that I can say is that I have sought the truth in good faith, and this is the conclusion that I've come to. But I'm always open to the possibility that I'm wrong, and invite God, or wherever the source of the data that will convince me otherwise to come from, because I want to know the truth. That is fundamentally what I'm about.
Awesome. I appreciate that response. And any words there, Bill?
For me, I became a creationist before I was a Christian. I silently, I'd never insulted one. I thought Christians were nuts, uneducated, superstitious, brainwashed by grandma and grandpa. I'm skinny, but I worked construction for 7 summers, some of them with all born agains. And I just thought intellectually they were closed-minded to the truth. Creation made me realize there's something out there and we are not related to bacterium. And then I pursued what I believe to be truth. I studied the Bible without believing it at first and believed it to be inspired by God. And I don't doubt Ron has read it many, many times. So I just think, I just hope he continues to pursue what I think is the most important pursuit in life. And that's truth. And I believe truth is God. So no matter what Ron believes, I think he's a wonderful guy.
Thank you.
But keep looking, Ron.
I want to mention this, by the way. I've at this point talked to lots and lots of Christians, and lots also at this point, lots of Young Earth Creationists. I went seeking them out a couple of years ago because I wanted to find out how somebody could sustain a belief in this theory that to me just seemed completely absurd. And since then, I've come to a much better understanding of that. And I one of the reasons I'm here is because I've really developed a kind of respect for YCs in particular, despite the fact that I think they're completely and utterly wrong. But you're the first one I've met where your belief in the Bible didn't precede your belief in creationism, and I find that absolutely yes, and I find that fascinating. So this is new data.
To get into my personal life, I believed in creation in 1986, but I didn't believe in Christ until 1989. It took me a long time.
I'd be interested to learn more about your intellectual development, but that's not quite the phrase I was looking for. My wife is telling me that that I need to go make dinner. So we need to wrap this up.
Yes. Well, that was the last question, last super chat. So
good timing.
Just on time. And I know dinner is extremely important. So guys, I really appreciate you giving us your time. This isn't your first time on, so we appreciate it. Once again, a debate to remember, great discussion, very respectful. Before we sign off, if you guys had any final words, then the floor is yours, and then we'll call it a night.
Ron, you want to go first, or you want me to?
I don't care. This has been my favorite debate on SFT so far, so thank you. This has been really, really great. I'd love to do it again.
Looks like it gets better with time, gets better with age. So this is great, because I think this has been maybe your 8th. I'm not sure, but
I'm losing count.
Debates for the both of you. So. And we love it. So we love the both of you. We appreciate your time. And
wait, can I close?
Yes. I'm sorry, Bill. I forgot about you. Go ahead, Bill.
Poor Bill.
It's a tie. On my tombstone, I jokingly say I might want engraved, I thank God I was an atheist. Because I understand atheists. They're some of the most moral people they are. Some of them are sincere. And I love them. I don't believe in bashing anybody, calling them names, picking on them, because we're all a bunch of slobs trying to get through life, trying to seek out truth. And I care about Ron in a manly way. I love him, and I hope he keeps seeking. And again, the fires are terrible, but still be thankful for all the thankful things that we have for us, Ron.
Absolutely.
Awesome. Well, it's like I said, there's no reason why we can't disagree on things and also discuss our disagreements, but at the end of the day, still be friends and get along. So, Ron, we're going to get you to your dinner, and we're gonna call it a night.
I said something about pizza and ice cream.
Pizza and ice cream sounds pretty good right about now. Okay, thank you to the audience. You guys were great. Thanks for the questions. Thanks for the super chats. Standing for Truth is out.